Good afternoon and welcome to everyone for this afternoon's Glenorchy Planning Authority for Monday the 4th of May 2026. I would like to acknowledge the Muranina people as the traditional owners of this land. We recognise all Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the original owners and continuing custodians of the land and waters of this island, Latroita. We pay our respect to Aboriginal elders past and present, and we commit to working for a city that welcomes and respects all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. My name is Sue Hickey. I'm the Mayor of Glenorchy and Chair of today's Planning Authority meeting. Joining me this afternoon are my fellow authority members, and they are Deputy Mayor Alderman Russell Yaxley, Alderman Tim Marks, Alderman Stephen King, and Alderman Josh Cockshott. And joining me to my left is our CEO, Emilio Riavi. We also have a number of planning staff in attendance this afternoon, including our planning team, led by Helen, and she's the lead statutory planner, and David Parnham, the Heritage Officer, and Emily Birch, who's the Senior Transport Engineer. Item 1 is the Planning Authority Declaration. The Glenorchy Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. The Planning Authority has full power to make planning decisions on behalf of the council. There are meeting procedures, and the first one is that the Planning Officer presents the assessment and recommendation and then answers any questions of the elected members. Please note, at this stage, a decision has not been made on the application. The chairperson, which is myself, invites the applicant and any interested parties to have their say by addressing the meeting. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. The chairperson may ask the planning officer to comment on any matters raised, and the planning authority will then discuss the application. For statutory planning applications, the Planning Authority decides the application and the Senior Statutory Planner explains the appeal rights. For planning scheme amendments, the Strategic Planner explains the decisions being made by the Planning Authority and the Tasmanian Planning Commission. We do have legal requirements, and they are: when deciding an application, the authority is required by law to seek to further the sustainable development objectives of the Act, consider representations received during the public notification period, and make the decision by reference to the current planning scheme provisions. We have meeting rules, so we please ask everyone to comply with the directions given by the chairperson, and please respect other people's views and their right to have a say. Item 2 is apologies and leave of absence. I don't believe it. No apologies. Anyone with leave of absence? No. Item 3, pecuniary interest. Does any member have a pecuniary interest in any of the items on the agenda this afternoon? No.
Other than liking chocolate, no.
Well, I think everyone likes chocolate, so you can be excluded. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes. Do I have someone to move the minutes of the Glenorchy Planning Authority meeting held on Monday the 16th of March 2026? Thank you, Alderman Marks. A seconder, please. Thank you, Alderman King. Alderman Marks. Do you have anything?
Just that the minutes were true and correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any further discussion? No? Then I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And now, we're getting on to item 5. The proposed use and development of the tourist operation Chocolate Experience at Cadbury, 100 Cadbury Road, Claremont. I would now like to invite the relevant planning officer to present the proposal and finish with the recommendations. So Helen Ayres, and who is our senior lead planner, will take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So what we're looking at today is a tourist operation in the front grounds of the Cadbury Chocolate Factory. So the proposal is for, this is the overall site of the factory. This is the existing development on site. This also shows where the car parking is, so to the top of the plan over Cadbury's Road. As we can see here from the zoomed in image of the site, we can see that the factory will be the visitor experience will be to the front of the factory, adjacent to the main driveway into the Cadbury Chocolate Factory. What's proposed is a 3-storey tourist operation, so there will be a variety of uses, but basically it's a chocolate emporium centralised around the Cadbury Chocolate Factory, run independently. So we've got making chocolate, chocolate experiences, all sorts of chocolate-related tourist activities. We've also got an ancillary cafe, shop, and a function centre that will operate some evenings through the week. Central to the operation of the visitor experience is a ferry to provide access. So 70% of patrons accessing the visitor experience will be coming by ferry to the site, with approximately 30% either coming by vehicle or by other active transport means. There were a number of discretions assessed, so I'm hoping you'll forgive me, having read the report, if I don't go into the details of all of the discretions that were present. But on balance, the proposal performs quite well against all of the discretions. But what I might do at this point is hand over to our Heritage Officer to provide a more detailed assessment of the heritage issues that were considered in the assessment.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair. As I think everyone here knows, we've been on a fair journey with this one through amendment and into the application. In the wash-up, 3 key considerations in terms of heritage were compatibility with the form of the Cadbury factory, the appropriate siting of the chocolate experience at Cadbury in the parkland, and any impact and mitigation measures around that. Carry on. So I would like to acknowledge Cumulus Studio have done a wonderful job of designing the building in a manner I think that will fit into the parkland. It's probably the only location that would be, from the heritage point of view, successful, and in doing so they have retained the legibility of the Cadbury rail formation. They've also incorporated that potentially within the access to the visitor centre, and that then would facilitate wayfinding and potentially be able to be interpreted as part of that. So we've got a condition just to reinforce that aspect. But if you look at this image here, you will see the line of best fit with the factory. It doesn't dominate. It fits in, it almost reads, although its cladding is obviously distinctive and appropriately so, as it's kind of industrial in size, but it'll also be a great gateway to the factory, or an adjunct to it. And as you can see, the silos, the clock tower still stand proud there, and the horizontality of the factory as well is respected in the design. So that obviously satisfied the performance criteria in regards to that. If we go to the next one, Helen. So this is just another overview image, which is helpful because it shows how it fits within the parkland. We'll see in a minute that there's inevitably going to be some tree removal, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see the historic pathway approach to the factory and the tree line approaches there. You can see it's clear of the former Cadbury branch line railway, and so that all works in well. It fits in well in that context. Yeah, the next one. As I said, there will be some inevitable removal of trees. There will be something like 4 Pinus radiata at the end of that avenue that will need to be removed, and 1 outlier tree. And obviously you can see there's other tree removal there that's inconsequential from the heritage point of view. But the fact that the building is located towards the end of the avenue means that even with that tree removal, it will remain legible, because the balance of the avenue remains intact and uninterrupted. But one of the other, key tenets of the application is that there will be a succession planting implemented to ensure that the avenue, insofar as that will be replicated in the future. The trees are around 80 years old, coming to the end of their useful landscape life, and so rather than leave it until they are completely senescent and need to be removed, and then commence succession planning. The proposal is to now commence that with a different species, admittedly. But I should say there's a backstory here, if I could just indulge you for a second, Mommy, that this avenue refers all the way down. There's a few gaps around Summerdale Road, but it refers all the way around Cadbury Road, past the school, in Council's Road Reserve, and in the property that is 36 Cadbury Road. We had some work done to assess the avenue ourselves, which accords with the assessment that was in terms of the existing pine trees and their age and you know the remaining lifespan, which accords with the current arborist assessment. But we also asked the arborists to look into species that could replace the pines, and they came up with Lepidodendron tulipifera, which is a tulip tree. We ran that past our arborist internally to see whether they would make good street trees, given how close those trees are to the edge of Cadbury Road as it comes around the sweep and up towards the factory. And they were happy with that species. There's no Goldilocks tree. We might have preferred a native species, but in the end, these are trees that will live for a long time, can cope with a variety of soil conditions, and bearing in mind the soil type underneath the pine trees is going to be acidic. They'll be able to tolerate that. A variety of soil types as well, clay, and from sandy soils through to clay. They like all trees need to be established, but once that happens, they should make attractive landscape elements. And so the intent in the future is that if we progress through a succession planning, is they will start to grow, even with the pine tree still there. When the time comes to take the pines down, these will be advanced and be able to make the next leap. So otherwise we're left with kind of a desert before we start the process. So that's a definite advantage of the application. If we carry on. This view here just is looking towards where the visitor centre building will be. You can see the ends of the pines there. A number of those will be removed as part of this application. As I say, you can see there at the end of the avenue. If we go to the next one, Helen. But the balance of the avenue will still remain intact. So the image on the left is the pedestrian pathway on approach to the factory, or actually that one's looking away. And the other one is looking at the road approaches, which is one side of the pedestrian approach, which you can still spot across to the right. And so the balance of that avenue will remain intact, and the succession plantings will be in between the pines. And we've established through further information that can be successfully achieved. The next one, please. And that's just an overview. Again, by now, with the coincidence between the previous images and this one, you can see where the building will fit in. So then it brings me to impacts and mitigation measures. We've attempted to work cooperatively with the applicant to understand what the form of the access way will be. We understand it will be in that location. And from the heritage point of view, really the issue is going to be trying to make it as recessive as possible in the landscape, so it blends in. Because, you know, the factory by Mountain and Sea sat on top of the landform. This structure, in many ways, and I guess it's a complement to Cumulus in their design. This is the structure that potentially has the greatest impact visually on appreciation of the factory. It's obviously, you know, it's absolutely essential given the way people are going to be ferried to the site. But the heritage conditions really require a further endorsement based on further detail once the final form of the access way is known. And again, it's about low reflectivity, which is already mentioned in the specifications. We'll look at light reflection. There's already an indication that the attempt's going to be to not, you know, shed too much light from it. It'll need lighting for safety. But also looking at the materials and seeing if we can make them recessive, and if there's any way that the impact will be able to be softened by vegetation, landscaping. But until we know its the final form of this element, we can't be certain about that. So that, you know, I don't like kicking the can down the road for further approval, because I prefer the further approval to occur with the elected members, through the elected members. But it's the most practical way to enable us to achieve what we want to achieve, given that the final design is perhaps not resolved. I think that's it. Thank you.
So that brings us to the representations received for the application. There were a significant number of supporting representations, basically indicating how positive this will be for the state, for the tourism industry, for jobs, for all sorts of things. So I haven't put all of those into the representations area, but the representation against the application focused on the removal of the historic trees, which David's very eloquently explained for us now, the impact on the open space. Now this is regarding the perception of the community for a significant amount of time that the garden area at the front of the Cadbury factory is public space. However, unfortunately, whilst the factory owners have always shared that with the community, the fact remains that it's private property. So it is a change to the available recreation area within the immediate vicinity, but it's actually not removing any public open space from the community. And lastly was the building height, because it is quite a large building, but again, as David has explained, given the factory context and given the provisions we have to work with, it's considered that the height of the building is appropriate for the area. Which brings me actually to the end of what I would like to say, and I'm assuming there'll be several questions.
Yes, as you'd expect for a development of this significance.
Yes.
So I'm going to call for any questions from our authority members regarding planning. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Well done on the applicant in terms of the presentation of the whole plan. It's, you know, very extensive and there's been a lot's been considered. I think I want to make a bit of a short statement, if you allow, Mayor. Just in terms of, as being an elected member representing the community, this is indeed an exciting proposal. The tourism operation, the economic value that it's going to bring to our city. So from an elected member point of view, when can we start? But unfortunately, we're not on this panel today, or on this authority, or on this meeting today to make decisions around that. We're here as a member of the planning authority, and that role requires it to be different. We need to assess the proposal and the planning merits around the standards and performances. So I just want to make that really clear. We can't really go into the elected member representative side, and that's not being difficult. That's just us doing our job. So I've got a number of questions regarding this, and just, if you could bear with me. Just regarding the ferry, the report talks about 70% use being from ferry, and that effectively underpins all the way through that we're talking the 70% application of where it talks about 1,000 people surveyed, and where 50% of the interstate visitors would be come via the ferry, 19% of Tasmanians would come by the ferry. And then it kind of seems to assume that the unshore people would automatically go into use those spaces. So for me, that's probably not evidence. It's a bit of, it's a bit of an assumption, if that makes sense. And I guess, there's an assumption built on an assumption. And, if you assume too much, it can, there's a common saying about what assuming does. So I guess for mine, are you able to expand on the methodology and why that's acceptable from a planning officer's point of view?
Yes, absolutely. So the applicant has provided us the study that they undertook as the basis for the numbers coming by ferry and coming by vehicle. We have taken that on board and asked a few further questions about how that will actually function and operate moving forward with the operation. And the advice has been that it will be managed through ticketing for the site. So when you purchase a ticket for any of the ticketed events on site, you will either purchase a ferry access or a vehicle access ticket. and that the ticketing will be limited to ensure compliance with that 30-70 split. I think there's about a 5% of people anticipated to attend that are unticketed visitors to the site. But based on the information that we had available to us and based on that being the business model presented, we've actually proposed conditions and there are a lot of conditions, so forgive us, please. But at condition 27, I believe it is, we've conditioned to ensure that only 30% of tickets based on the traffic impact assessment that was provided us, which had a anticipated number of patrons per day. So I probably should defer to our traffic engineer, but I'm going to see how I go and ask her to help if I get stuck. So based on the traffic impact assessment, it was anticipated that there would be roughly 99 vehicles per session coming to the site, which equates to about 287 ticketed people based on a 3 people per car assessment. So we have conditioned to limit the number of vehicles to ensure that they comply with that. So an overall requirement is that 30% of patrons can come by vehicle based on those numbers, which is limited to no more than 99 vehicles. And what we've done to ensure compliance with the conditions, similar to the noise conditions we put on Mona and similar to the traffic conditions we put on the showground, is we've required that there be record keeping by the operators of the site, and that if we get any complaints or questions, we can ask for those records and the operator has to provide them to us so that we can ensure that the conditions have been complied with.
Okay, so it's managed by ticketing, and,
Yes.
and we're able, as council is able to then request that information at any time to make sure that conditions being managed effectively. Is that?
Yes, that's
Yep.
correct.
Okay. So, was there any reason why we didn't ask for a report, an independent report?
Well, I guess that we've looked at the business model that's being proposed. So we've worked based on that. We have done our own independent peer reviewing of that report because we have the in-house expertise, and we've considered that the report that's been provided does stack up. So we didn't see that we needed to waste the money essentially going external.
Yep, okay, that's no worries. Just regarding the accessibility, I've read and reread this a number of times just to try and make sure of it, and I've tried to visualise myself arriving by a ferry and how it would operate.
Yep.
And it doesn't quite make sense. The inclinator is specifically there for people with mobility issues that arrive by a ferry. So when the inclinator ends, there's still stairs.
Yes.
And so from there, and it says, the report says, for those who can't use stairs, which I would assume that they wouldn't be able to use it because they've just come from the inclinator. From there, every person you would use the buggy, which only fits 7 people at a time, and they've got to go on a track around and up. From the report, it talks about the motor experiencing being 16 to 24 people will require mobility assistance per ferry trip, and it states that more for Cadbury with families and prams and all those types of items. So we're probably looking at maybe 4 to 5 trips of this buggy for each arrival of the ferry.
Yes.
Is there any reason why the inclinator can't go all the way up? And is it comes down to the heritage viewing of it all, or what's the reason behind all that?
Okay, I'm going to take a slight step back.
Yep.
So DDA compliant access is not something that we can consider through the planning scheme.
Okay.
So what we are required to consider is, the application is had the potential to be discretionary because of the number of vehicle movements per day to the site through the Road and Rail Assets Code. So in order to address that discretion, the applicant has taken the path of the 70% arriving via ferry to the site, which means that in assessing that the ferry works, we have asked as much as we can to ensure that we don't approve something that then requires such changes to the landscape that it's a new permit and would be changed.
Sure.
There was significant back and forth between us and the applicant trying to resolve exactly this issue.
Yep.
And we reached a medium level ground where we've reached a point where you catch the inclinator, to a point. You then have a waiting area for the buggy to take you up and down, and you have the stairs. The buggy path, I believe, will be too steep to be DDA compliant, so we did interrogate quite extensively how this would work for DDA compliance, just to ensure that basically the public, exactly as you say, have access through the ferry for 70% of patrons.
Yeah.
We've reached a point where we have been assured that the buggy, though it's not yet designed, because that's probably going beyond the scope of this before we get the final approval,
Yeah.
will be able to take people with mobility issues and people with prams to the top. Now, the estimate at the early stage was probably 7 passengers per buggy, but until it's designed, we just don't know the numbers on that.
Yeah.
So you're quite right. It may not be fully DDA. It may be an uncomfortable wait for people in the waiting area because there's no shelter there. They're going to be standing out in all weather waiting to be buggied up, and if they're the last one off the ferry, they'll be the last one in the buggy.
Yeah.
However, ticketing is 30% by vehicle. So, and there is disabled parking in the roadway on the way in where you turn around at the gates to the factory proper. So there is dedicated parents parking and disability parking in that little roadway. So if people have the need or the mobility issues that require them to have more direct access, there are alternative means of transport available to them. And ticketing should be able to accommodate that. So I would think this is up to the operators to determine this, it's not up to me. But when I think about it, I think about when you catch a flight and they say, do you require meet and assist? Do you require assistance accessing the plane? There may be something like that they can deal with their patrons, but there is an alternative.
That's sort of an operating.
That's an operational consideration.
Yeah. Okay. I just find it good. What happens if the ticketing for vehicles is all exhausted and they can't get there? So that's, again, there's just little operational type scenarios which causes a little bit of concern. Are we sure that the ferry can run after 6 o'clock?
In what regard?
So for the events that run at the for the function centre, so they have to arrive after 6 p.m. They have to arrive via ferry. There's no access via vehicle.
Yes.
Can the ferry run after 6 p.m. through to 11 p.m?
My understanding is that that's something that MAST will need to approve separately from this process. And I would think that the applicant will probably respond to you at some point down the track, but I would imagine that they wouldn't have come this far without at least some indication of support for that sort of operation of the ferry. So we have to trust that they've done their due diligence in that regard.
Yeah. Okay. It's a lot of trust and assumptions. So I guess if you can, I'm not here to be a pain. I'm just really trying to make sure that we have a really first-class, world-class tourism operation, and something that Glenorchy is really proud of, and that's something that we've got to be mindful of. I won't go into that. I guess one thing I just wanted to double check regarding the Aboriginal Heritage Assessment, that wasn't provided at the time. Has that been completed since, or is that on the way? Or?
So Aboriginal Heritage is expressly and deliberately separate from any LUPA assessment, and the reason for that is because Aboriginal heritage sites are often so sensitive that putting information regarding where they are and what the nature of them is in the public realm can be potentially harmful to their integrity. So you're going to love this. What we have to do is we have to trust the applicant to have done their due diligence, because it is very tightly governed under separate legislation. So it was both referred to Aboriginal Heritage Tasmania by the applicants and by council at the start of the process, because it's a foreshore area. And the advice that we've got from the Aboriginal Heritage is, thank you, we're aware of the application, we're undertaking our assessment. And generally speaking, that's all the advice that we will get, because we don't need to know, because as soon as it's out there, there's a risk to the integrity of the Aboriginal heritage. So I believe it has been completed. I believe that it has got all the relevant permits. I can't ask for them
That's fine. It was just said it was our thing, so I just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's been taken very seriously.
Yeah, great. That's good. And just regarding the parking, so we've got the development that includes a cafe, a retail shop, and obviously the function centre, as well as the chocolate experience. And the applicant saying that these are some of them are minor add-ons, which means the assessment is, it's assessed at a lower parking requirement. Could you just explain a little bit around that? Because I just want to make sure that we're doing all the right things here.
Yes. Okay, so when we assess use and development on a site, often you'll have, for example, if you've got a large warehouse that's stocking and freight distribution from that warehouse, the primary function is the bulky goods sales. However, within that, you would obviously have to have an office for the people who coordinate the phone sales and coordinate the trucks and what have you. You would also potentially have a small shop front area where people pay their bills or collect it if they're in a hurry because they've messed up their ordering. Overall, that would all still be bulky goods sale and hire because it's all integral and interwoven into itself. For the Cadbury visitor experience, the scheme amendment process that we went through, because obviously it's an industrial site where we don't want to fettle industrial activity, we also are quite close to residential, so we don't want to impact on the residential amenity. So the process we went through to introduce the SAP to the site gave us capacity to entertain a visitor experience. It also gave us capacity to entertain several other uses, but only when they are directly associated with the operation of the visitor experience.
Yep.
So what's been proposed by the applicant is a single building which can't easily have elements opened and closed to just have this bit going or just have that bit going. So it is all a visitor experience, a tourism operation. And part of the tourism operation, much like a lot of museums you go to around the world, has a gift shop associated with, and it's not a broader shop, it's a very specific shop that's only selling chocolate-related themed things for the visitor experience. And you've got a cafe which is on theme as well. So all of that quite comfortably fits within the tourism operation. The function centre element is a little bit different in that it sits slightly outside, but again, it's only allowed on site by virtue of the the tourism operation, and it's only a small element. And I think that the traffic assessment went down both pathways with its assessment, and it was considered that if we accepted that it was all tourist operation, we meet the scheme, we don't have a parking shortfall. Even if we go down the individual component uses, given the nature of the use and how it's to operate, it was considered that the car parking on site would be adequate. So I think that I know that we have very thoroughly interrogated to ensure that we're not going to have excessive overflow car parking in the neighbourhood. Yep. And especially with the ferry only for the function centre of an evening. So the only vehicles on site of an evening will be staff parking. So that won't cause the amenity issues, and through the day, the function centre won't be operating. So don't quote me on that. The primary focus of the site through the day is the tourist operation. So it will all, yes, the car parking has been extensively considered in either circumstance.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. On the mics.
Yes, I've got a couple of queries. First off, on the inclinator, if a person like myself in a wheelchair goes up there and can't transfer from the wheelchair to the buggy, how are we going to get up? Because you're going to get a situation where you'll get disability organisations, because we've got the most disabled people in Tasmania, are going to go there and won't be able to get off the boat.
Yes, I hear what you're saying completely, and we did interrogate that quite thoroughly. We've reached a point where, because it comes down to the DDA compliance, we're still in an area of, I think, limited uncertainty, because for planning I can't assess it, but for building we might be in a position where, worst case, we end up with some alternate path designed to make it at a grade that means that you can access via the path without having to access in and out of your chair. but we don't have the final specifications or the design. We don't know. It's anticipated that the buggy may be able to lift chair and all into the buggy. Until we see the final product, I hear your concern, and that was a concern of ours as well. And I guess that's where the operator will have to look very carefully at how they manage their ticketing to facilitate if people need to access the site by a car, not by a ferry, accommodating that need.
And also, on that point, with the function centre of a night timer not being allowed to be accessed by car, if a disability organisation rents that building for the night time, 99% of Ontario now will go by car, because I certainly won't go by boat.
The condition that has been proposed, yes, you're quite right. Yes. And that is the explanation that was offered by the applicant as well, is that it would be all function visitors would be coming by ferry.
Yes, so you're going to be blocking a lot of organisations and people from renting the function centre.
Unless they can make the buggy system work, which we're assured that they can.
Any further questions?
With the buggy system, even of the night time, I tell you now, I myself, as a person, will not go up it of a night time. And if it's bucketing down with rain, I'm going to come by car. And if they say, no, I can't go in because I'm by car, it's going to turn a lot of people off.
And I guess
I've been discussing this with a lot of people in the disability sector and
yes,
not happy.
I can completely hear what you're saying. Unfortunately, we've pushed it as far as we were capable under the planning scheme, and we just don't have any teeth within the planning scheme to be able to push it any further than we already did. But I do hear what you're saying, because that was one of our
Do we
concerns.
have anybody here from Cadbury's to talk about it?
We do, and I suspect that will form part of their presentation.
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, Alderman King?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just completely concur with the Deputy Mayor's comments, very well articulated, and Cadbury's is a very big part of this community, has been for a long, long time. And you've answered some questions. Helen, you're so good at this. You've answered some questions very well already. I stuck on, there's so many conditions here. I don't think I've ever seen this many conditions on a planning case here, but the one I focused on to sort of express about all of the conditions was the one you've just answered about parking. And my only concern there with the parking is you mentioned you could still have people just rock up, and obviously there wouldn't be a spot in the car park for them necessarily, but you're saying they can't park in the staff car park. Well, people will park wherever they can. Who's going to monitor that and monitor all these other conditions? We've got numerous conditions here, and probably through you, CEO, how are we going to monitor all these conditions is obviously a great impost on council and cost to council. I don't want that to affect the proposal going forward, but I'm just wondering how we as a council, and it is part of this whole process, how are we going to monitor all this? Who's going to be responsible for them? Is David going to be up there checking on the trees every 5 minutes? Is Helen going to be up there? Are you going to have traffic people up there? Is this going to be, put a shuttle officer council up there? What are we going to do?
Mayor, council does have some planning compliance officers that do ensure developments do comply with their conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So probably some of it is complaints activated, so they would respond to complaints or concerns. They might do just some spot checks as well, just to see if developments are complying with their conditions.
That's great, because I mean, to give the community comfort, I mean, to know that we are not in control of this, but are able to monitor and do whatever we need to do to make sure this is suitable and operating under the conditions that have been given. Gosh, you created some reading for us. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you. And Alderman Cockshott?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very detailed report, and like my fellow elected members, I do appreciate the detail we've gone into. I guess the Deputy Mayor mentioned what I was about to say was the assumption. There is a lot of assumptions in this, particularly the ferry. 70%, that's a huge number when you consider the network we have in Tasmania currently. That's kind of a bit of a red flag, if I'm honest, but I guess if there's checks and balances in play, keen to hear what the applicant has to say, but that'll be interesting, as well as what Alderman Mark said in regards to after 6 p.m. the function centre having no parking, so to speak. So I do find that interesting, but if we're confident we've got that in place and we have the checks and balances, I'm confident with that regard, but it's been better hearing it from you and going through the report in some detail.
Thank you. The Deputy Bucker.
Thank you. I sat here dwelling on another one. With that path being too steep, if that path was at an acceptable level, which we can't, plan anything because it's not part of the scheme, but if that was at 1 to 10, would people in wheelchairs and mobility, is that mobility able to be, can that work without the buggy system?
There is a grade that is acceptable.
Yep.
And that is deemed to comply so that people don't need to rely on the buggy system.
Yep.
I actually don't know if it is 10%,
Are you talking
7%, so
about
it's the 7% grade.
So 1 to 7.
7%, so I don't, 1 in 14.
Sorry, yeah.
So if the path were to be, have its gradient reduced to 7% or 1 in 14, then it wouldn't need to have the buggy at all.
Yep.
However, my understanding is due to site constraints, that's probably not achievable from the information we have available to us.
It would be good for us. Anyway, thank you.
So I just can add, so you can't terrace it or zigzag it in the sense to make it a different gradient.
Go longer to go out.
So
Yeah, well, that's what we've done.
the question has been asked. We did interrogate all options for the pathway quite extensively to try and see if there was a way to avoid the buggy entirely, but there were obviously physical constraints on the ground to extending the length of the pathway to make it comply at grade. And if you started to do switchbacks, you would have quite the high retaining walls, and then you compete between your accessibility and your heritage values of the site. And you've got to weigh up all of the competing interests on site. So this is where the applicant has chosen the buggy and the slightly steeper pathway as the best fit solution for the site, given the constraints that they have.
Yeah, well, I know I'm strong in my wheelchair and I can push myself around, but the ramping system at Mona, I can't push up without a carer pushing me, and that's going to be a lot of stress on carers and stuff, pushing people up this ramp. It's certainly not going to be.
And I believe the Mona one, given that it doesn't have any buggies, would have to be compliant ramp.
It might be compliant, but it's not compliant for everybody.
Exactly. So providing a compliant ramp may not
That's
be
what
the
I'm saying. In the
solution.
night time,
Yeah,
people should be able to drive there and park.
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay, thank you for all the questions from the authority members. I heard the word trust used before, and trust is one of those really interesting words where it can be quite positive and hopeful. And in the case of, we sit here as laymen without planning qualifications and road qualifications, traffic qualifications, heritage qualifications as individuals. We are, I believe, trusting some very professional officers who've provided us a huge amount of information about a subject that they know well. I feel for them in that obviously we've all had issues with the state planning laws. They are not a perfect thing in any way, even though a decade ago they were going to be faster, simpler and cheaper. I've not seen any action in that regard, and that is quite frustrating when it leaves gaps that will have to be filled. We have a trust thing in that this is no fly-by-night operator. This is a significant developer with some huge accolades to the developments to date, and they are disability compliant, high standard, first class, and have been a real gift to the state wherever they are, bringing in millions of dollars. So, and they wouldn't be allowed to operate if they didn't meet all compliance laws. So it's faith and trust that I have here with the information before me that says, I'd like to see buses going to a conference or a function centre at night. I have a disabled partner. I too would like to be more comfortable that the disability access has been dealt with. I have elderly parents, the same situation, getting old myself. But I have faith that these will be dealt with in the next stages of this development, because it wouldn't be allowed to go ahead as a discriminatory building or things like that. So on that basis, I am comfortable with what has been presented and very much look forward to the applicant giving us their address. Now, I know we have several people in the gallery today, and I'm assuming they all would like to talk. Would you like to go first, Emma, or do you want to hear you? Are you happy to go first? Yeah. Okay. Emma Riley is going to be speaking on behalf of the applicant.
I have David Inches with me.
Oh, yes, and David Inches. Thank you. You have 5 minutes to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And first of all, I want to thank Council for organising the special GPA meeting and for Council officers in turning around the assessment report very quickly. We do appreciate the effort everyone has gone to. I'm not going to talk to the application in significant detail. Obviously, a very comprehensive report's been presented to you. We thank the Council officers for the recommendation. What I will say is obviously this is a very large and significant application. Obviously there are quite a number of conditions. From my perspective, that is a very normal course of event for an application of this size. It is also a very normal course of event for an application of this size to be prepared on the basis of certain assumptions. It is precisely the reason why the legislation and the planning scheme allows councils to apply conditions, so that as you move into more detailed design as well as operational details, things can be resolved as they go through. There's just one particular condition we wanted to talk to you about this afternoon. I will say, just before I do that, I wanted to address a couple of things that have been raised. Yes, we have completed an Aboriginal heritage assessment. That was done ahead of lodging the application with Council, and the application has been prepared in response to what we found through that, but as Council officers have identified, that information can't be released publicly. But yes, we have definitely done that work. David might speak to you a little bit more later on. Obviously, we acknowledge the concerns raised in relation to access during evening functions. The application was presented on the basis that in evening functions, guests would arrive by ferry. That is, the operational details around that is certainly something we're happy to take away and consider as the proposal is refined going forward. And we can come back to Council if required at a later stage, but we did that, I suppose, because that was the way that we envisaged the operation at the time that the application came forward. So the condition I really wanted to talk to you about was condition 27. It's obviously been brought up a few times tonight. And I want to start by saying, in the daytime operations scenario, the information that we submitted to Council around car parking was on the basis that we calculated demand for the standalone components of the uses. So we took a conservative assumption on the car parking requirements under the planning scheme and assessed the components as if they were standalone uses, not ancillary uses to the main tourist operation. And we comply with the permitted standard in the planning scheme for the daytime operations. We appreciate, obviously, there's broader consideration around traffic management and the Road and Rail Access Code, but we are concerned with the proposed wording of condition 27 in that it refers to as managing parking demand in accordance with a traffic impact assessment. That traffic impact assessment covers parking demand associated with the factory operations as well as other parking demand in the area. So the condition doesn't provide the specificity that we need from an application perspective going forward. And there is obviously not providing us with any flexibility around managing the total 144 car parking spaces between visitors and staff. So I suppose what we are requesting council is potentially an amendment to that condition where it says something along the lines of for daytime operations between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m, the operator of the site must manage ticketing to ensure that there are no more than 144 vehicles parked on site associated with the tourist operation. And we are happy to provide the details of records of ticket sales and that, but just to provide a clearer condition for future compliance and avoidance of ambiguity. So look, technically we could remove the function centre component and we would have been compliant with the permitted standards. But we're happy to agree to a condition that provides the certainty for us in terms of operations going forward. David, I don't know if you want to add to the access for the nighttime functions as well.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thank you very much for a lot of thought, a lot of good questions, and that's the rigor we're all after. We're a customer-centred business, so whatever it takes to meet the demands of our visitors is exactly what we'll be doing. So if people want to come by vehicle for evening events, they'll come by vehicle. So whatever visitors want is what we'll be looking to deliver. We understand we have to look at addressing that with a minor amendment and all those things. But I just want to give you confidence that with all of the years of Simon Current delivering some of Tasmania's best tourism experiences, he is all about customers number one, and so am I. So we've invested, I think, nearly $5.5 million and 800 pages in the application, and there's only sort of so far you can dig. So some things, as we get closer to operation, the detail will be sort of refined out. But I can assure you, every single person that comes to the experience will have the best day of their time in Tasmania, and that will be our absolute focus to make sure for anyone who visits that's how the day rolls out.
Through you, Mayor, then.
Yes.
Is it appropriate then to ask through a senior planner for an adjustment to that now, to that parking, or has it got to be looked at more deeply?
I would like to confer with our senior traffic engineer to make sure that we're not doing anything that compromises the intention and the potential for overflow and nuisance in and around the area. But in principle, I don't know, can I have half a minute?
Emily, would you like to come to the table and explain that?
Just sorry, if I could ask, the question above that is, I think there's two parts to the thought process. Is that
So it's not as well, just saying and stuff.
So yes, we could amend the condition. Would have to tweak the detailed records of ticket sales confirming the site visitors and staff rostering. So
Yeah, 'cause you're balancing up tickets and car staff parking and who's
who's out?
Yes.
Yeah. So the 144 is the number, is the magical number.
yes.
Whether it's visitors or staff,
We don't care.
we don't care.
Yeah.
Is that right? Is that effectively?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yes, and I suppose we just wanted clarity that it's about managing ticketing to ensure that we've got no more than 144
The only thing I would say to
cars
that is-
parked on site.
Sorry, the only thing I'd say is if you've got staff that you're then going to say maybe, well, you can't park in the car park because we don't have room for you because we've got more ticketed people, go and park out in the street somewhere, which is going to encroach upon parking in the parklands around Cadbury's, etc. That's the only downside.
Well, as staff, the operator have greater capacity to incentivise use of other transport modes to the site and things like that. So it can control staff movement to the site just as much as the visitors through the ticketing.
Okay.
And sorry, is that not?
No.
Is that right? Yeah, so just in terms of the other comment that was made regarding access for vehicles after 6 p.m. in the planning scheme, that's not possible. Is that what we're saying? They have to come via ferry?
Through the chair, that is what the applicant has proposed, and that's what we have conditioned for at this point in time. So
That's
Yeah.
based on the supporting documentation that
Yes.
we've received. So we haven't received supporting
So for that to
documentation to
change,
suggest,
sorry.
yeah, we haven't received the supporting documentation to suggest that, for example, if we have vehicles parked in the car park outside of the permitted hours, other than the limited number of staff, so if we have patrons and guests leaving a function potentially at the end of a good night, they're not going to cause a noise nuisance to the nearby residential use.
Yeah.
Also, that there won't be any traffic conflicts. So we're not saying no to that. We're saying we haven't been given anything to give us comfort that that won't cause any conflict. So that if that's the path they choose to go down later, that's something that we can consider as an application. I won't say it'll be approved on spot, but it's something we can consider with the appropriate reporting.
Right, Alderman Cockshott?
I was going to say something, but I probably thought it wasn't a pretty good idea. I was going to say, why can't we just have 45 identified car parking spots for staff? But in saying that, it's no point, say, if you're on a shift and I'm saying 25 staff on site, it wouldn't make no sense. So I thought about it, and I thought, that doesn't make no sense in that perspective, but I guess it's good to hear that in regards to the 144 and how we can work through that. I do think at a later point in time, 28, which is the ferry situation after 6 p.m, will be something to consider. Particularly, I don't see everyone arriving by ferry. I think we need to have all modes of transport available, whether it's bus, car, whatever it may be. So,
Yes, can I just ask, what does a bus equate to in a car? How many cars make a bus? Like, this isn't per person, it's per car.
Yeah, look, I don't know the figure off the top of my head, but I mean, definitely we are happy to look at alternative arrangements for the functions where we can allow, for example, buses arriving for drop-off and pick-up. That is, I mean, as council's planning officer identified, that is something that we would need to prepare other supporting documentation on and come back to council on. And I mean, we're happy to commit to go away and consider that. Yeah, just noting that was, that's obviously a change from the application in which we prepared, and council has assessed, but yes, it can obviously be dealt with through a separate application later on.
Okay, now coming back to Alderman King.
Yes, so I just want to understand, were we worried about traffic flow of a night time coming from down there? Is that what one of the concerns was? Or?
Two concerns. One was increased traffic. The other was that the discretionary use standards within the SAP talk about the hours of operation.
Yeah.
And the function centre is proposed to open outside of the permitted hours of operation. And when it goes outside of that, there would be noise and amenity reports and lighting and things that we need to consider to make sure that it's not reducing the amenity to the residential properties within 50 metres of the car park, essentially, because it's close enough to be a problem. So we just, without the comfort that the mitigation's in place or that it's not likely to cause a problem, we erred on the side of this is what the public expected from reading the application. And the general public and the surrounding community would have read this application and thought, oh, well, night times won't matter, they'll all come up and down the river and it won't affect me. So given that that's what was advertised, that's the comfort we've tried to instill in the conditioning and the surety, because we didn't know how the traffic would work or what the noise would be.
I know it's not essentially relevant. I see it much safer for cars being able to go up there than the boat people with disabilities, etc. I see that a great advantage to them, and the amount of cars compared to the good old days when Cadbury's had 3,500 people there, and I lived in Bilton Street, and we'd watch a shift load of cars come 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, car after car after car going this way, car after car going that way. No one even thought about it, but I know we live in today, and Yeah.
Can I just ask, have we resolved the issue with the amendment, condition 27?
We've got some proposed wording written down. So for daytime operations between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m, the operator of the site must ensure that the parking demand is in accordance with the TIA by MCG consulted, dated 4th of March 2026, and ensure that at any one time there are no more than 144 vehicles on site associated with the CEC use, the Chocolate Experience Cadbury use.
Our concern is also with the reference to parking demand in accordance with the traffic impact assessment, because the traffic impact assessment covers parking demand associated with the factory operations, of which we will have no control over whatsoever.
Okay, is there something we should do about that? Or can do about it?
I would have thought that the rest of the condition achieves the same effect.
So your proposal is to remove is in accordance with the traffic.
So, what we propose is for daytime operations between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m, the operator of the site must ensure that ticketing is managed or must manage ticketing to ensure that there are no more than 144 vehicles parked on site associated with the tourist operation. And then that keeps us clear of anything associated with the factory operations.
Through the chair, does that then include the next paragraph?
Oh no, the next paragraph, that's fine, that. We can retain that because obviously the previous bit talks about managing ticketing.
So through you, Mayor, if I
We also need to manage the staff as well as staff rosters.
So maybe if we
We
say
have to
parking
retain
instead
that.
of ticketing. So amend yours slightly further to ensure that parking is managed to ensure that at any one time.
Yeah, we can say parking for staff and visitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we are saying that staff could be pushed out of their car park, in essence.
Well, it's just that we want, from a operational flexibility perspective, we may not need 45 staff on site at any one time. So if for example, if we're operating with only 20 staff on site, but the condition says we can only have 99 cars for visitors, there is latent capacity there that's not being used. Yeah.
But would that be taken up at change of shift?
Pardon?
Would that parking be taken up at change of shift?
I mean, there'll be a short change over at shift, but generally, because it's a daytime operation thing, it's not shift work like that happens at the factory, where there's a crossover period.
Good answer.
Through the chair, in the advice, can you refer to the traffic impact assessment and the numbers required to meet those parking numbers?
In the advice clause, that's fine.
It's worded up to change it here, don't we? So we need to have final wording before we can amend it at this meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing, apologies, and type it in here and then reshare.
Do we need to move an amendment there at this point or not?
Yeah, we'll wait for it to come up.
Yeah.
We're just going to have a few moments of deep thinking.
Sorry,
on the place.
Chair.
Yes.
Apart from 27, all the other discretions, there was no other concerns. There was one other you mentioned, wasn't there?
No, it was 27 that we wanted to raise today.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this obviously the conditions are very extensive, and I mean we have a view that maybe they don't all strictly relate to a planning scheme requirement, but we're happy to satisfy those conditions.
To work with them.
Yes.
Yeah, while we've got these few moments, it might be a good idea to put your head through there and just say we're going to be a while.
Okay, so.
I mean, I'm happy to do it for you, but I just think they'll be sitting there wondering.
Just for the benefit of the audience, we have a workshop after this, so that'll be delayed.
We haven't spoken to him yet. There's been no movements. Okay, so we can just.
That's what I was just verifying.
No.
I know your shoulders are too big.
So your check, is it?
I wish it was, it'd be a good quality one if it was, mate.
He's stressed out today, hasn't he?
Must tell me.
No, I'm sorry. Oh, God. It's my grandson's first birthday. I've got to.
Normally you've got like the PPE on, protective, you know, the
Yeah, no, I've got
hasn't he?
I've got my grandson's first birthday to go to, so I've got to give him a good impression of what he's probably.
How old is he?
One.
Oh, congratulations.
One. On the
Is he as also checked in?
He's number 8.
Wow.
We've now put a proposed amended condition on the screen.
Does that meet your requirement?
Yes, thank you.
Everyone's happy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or put it to a vote?
Do we happy to move that?
No?
Just that one.
We're
single-
moving the amendment.
I'll move the amendment.
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. So Alderman Cockshot's moving it and the deputy is seconding it. Do you want to say anything?
Look, I think there's been good discussion. I think it seems our planners are happy and obviously the applicant, so I think we've come to a good conclusion there. So I'm happy with the wording, how it is after what we've heard today, so.
Okay, thank you. No further discussion? Now, I'm going to put this amendment, but it then form part of the substantive motion, which we'll discuss after we've heard from Eddie Steenbergen and Pam Harvey. Okay? So I put the motion, all those in favour, it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for your time. So who would like to come up first? Pam Harvey or Eddie Steenbergen?
Are there any others there, ma'am?
Or anyone else? Did anyone express an interest, Eddie? Yes,
Just briefly.
Do you want to know who I am?
Yes.
No, you've been announced.
Yes, Eddie Steenbergen from Mary's Home Road, Rosetta. Frequent flyer of the council.
My issue sort of relates to what the Deputy Mayor mentioned about access and about travel between the jetty and the actual facility. And I think I understand how it's all meant to work on paper. I tried to draw a picture and I think I nearly got it right. But I'm more concerned about whether that access is all weather and all year round, because this is going to be a facility which I presume is going to operate all year round. And people are not just going to go there on the ferry, they're going to leave there on the ferry as well. So we need to consider people leaving as well as arriving, which has a different sort of complexity to it. So there'll be buggies going up and down. It's going to be a really interesting place to be with all these buggies and the inclinator moving. So it appears to me that conditions can relate to all manner of things. it would be really great if we had a condition that basically said that travel from the jetty, the ferry, to the facility and back was undercover and therefore all weather, all year round. Particularly in the evening. I mean, it's not going to be, even with the lighting that's been suggested, it's not going to be the sort of place that most people will want to go on a ferry in any case. So I suppose that's what I'm getting at. Some sort of condition that relates to all weather access and all year round access.
They might all be provided chocolate umbrellas. Do we have an answer on these concerns?
Unfortunately, yes, we do. And the answer is that given the significance of the site for a variety of heritage reasons, the visibility of the access is something that's been very carefully considered by the applicant and by our cultural heritage officer. And to propose a condition in the form that you're suggesting would significantly increase the amount of development in that delicate foreshore area in order to provide roofing that would significantly change the appearance of the peninsula and it's not something that we could condition for. It's something that the applicant would have needed to apply for if they had have chosen to do that. It's given the heritage values, I think that would be too significant an impost on the landscape without seeing a design for us to be able to condition in that way.
Have the proponents actually considered that possibility and tried to explore ideas on that?
We've not seen anything of that nature, but I would be quite confident that they would have thoroughly considered their business model and what their visitors will be doing and how they'll protect them from the elements.
Can I ask the proponents how they plan to protect visitors from the elements?
David, are you itching to say something?
Oh, I don't know about itching there, but I'm happy to say maybe I can. It's not something that we've considered because we consider what's put in front of us. So I think that's the first answer, part of the answer. The second part is in entertaining or in assessing this application, we've obviously accepted that there's a form of access from the river up to the facility. So it's got some structure to it. My issue is covered in conditions, and like I said, we didn't want to kick the can down the road with that. We'd much rather see a well-resolved application with regard to that access issue that we're all now throwing around, where you could go, right, we'd be confident about how that's going to actually look. So we have one plan from Realm that shows the most updated view in plan. Cumulus didn't address it in their document set to any degree, certainly not their montages. The applicant's heritage consultant didn't assess it. And so, in looking at it and then in understanding the discussions and the journey we've gone on talking about the DDA requirements and all that sort of thing, that's why I've simply put a condition around it that says you need to ensure that whatever form this ends up in is as recessive as possible in the landscape. I couldn't say, because I haven't assessed a roof, the more structure that you put there, in a sense, and the more obtrusive it becomes, obviously the greater the issue. But I haven't, in fairness, I haven't seen a concept with that and how that might appear against the landform. But it is true, the bigger that structure gets, the more intrusive it becomes. And we've talked about the zigzag arrangement that might occur, but as I say, we can only assess what's in front of us. We're not the designers, and we tried to go on that journey, but we've sort of, putting it politely, we've hit a mid-range solution and then tried to condition around that. So haven't assessed that. Not in a position to make a call on the fly unless I've got something in front of me.
I'm wondering if the proponents have anything to say on the subject.
We're allowed to do that?
If I were to make a
Do
comment.
proponents want to?
I'm happy to answer shortly, in a short way. The application for us represents a balance between all the competing interests that go into an application like this and the constraints that we have on the site. We acknowledge the access for all people is not going to be undercover, no matter what mode of transport they arrive, but neither is the access to pretty much most of the major tourist attractions in Tasmania. And I suppose we took a pragmatic approach between what we could provide, having regard to the capacity of the operation and the development, as well as the constraints that we were dealing with on the site. No site is unfortunately unconstrained, and in this situation we were obviously dealing with a combination of heritage and ecology and things like that, particularly in terms of that access point up from the jetty to the building.
Thanks.
Does that solve your problem, Eddie?
No, it doesn't, but
No.
that'll do for now. Thank you.
Okay. Pam, did you want to say something?
I wasn't going to say too much, but you might have to listen to a bit now. Sorry.
Okay. I'm afraid I have to limit you to 5 minutes.
Thanks. I was out there today, and I'm still none the wiser with some of it. The fence that we're talking about on that area is it this side of the fence, or the western side of the southwestern side of the fence, or is it on Cadbury's actual inside the fence, this building?
Would you like to bring up a slide to help, Pam?
Needs a lot of help, let me tell you. That was just one question. Yeah, I saw that, but there's a metal fence that goes along the divider. Yeah. And I didn't know whether the building was going to be, this proposition is going to be on the inside of that building in the Cadbury.
No, it's on the
going
outside.
to be on the outside.
So it's on the outside in the parkland at the front of the fenced factory area.
Yeah, okay, that's one question. The other thing was, when I said, there was a lot of parking there today, available parking. So this was a working day, so the car park wouldn't have been half full. And then you've got extra parking over where the football field and soccer grounds are. There's extra parking there. But if I was taking some, and I mean, we travel a lot, so we tend not to take the one that takes you there have to buy the ticket for the boat, because that adds up to what you're already paying. And if you have a car hire or something like that, you've been to Mona, you go to something else, you're not going to buy a ticket that you have to pay twice for, if you know what I mean. So I don't think that the boat, having to go on the boat to me would not make my day any better. So I'm just looking at it from my point of view. A lot of the things, if Cadbury's, who owns that land? If Cadbury's how far does Cadbury's land go? Is the next question. They don't own all that point, so you've got to sort of say where or whatever that they own.
So this slide now shows the extent of everything that Cadbury's own.
So all the red stuff is Cadbury's, is it?
Yes, it is.
So where does that stop? Where is the new place going to start?
Okay.
At the end of the red stuff or further in?
Within the red stuff is
within the red stuff. So it's on Cadbury's land?
Yes.
So it'll be renting off Cadbury's or paying for rent?
I'm not sure what the arrangement will be with Cadbury's. That's a commercial arrangement between the Cadbury factory owners and the chocolate experience operators.
Okay. I was just thinking how who's going to be responsible for a lot of those things, because the car park is going to be Cadbury's car park, isn't it?
Yes, it will be sharing the Cadbury's car park, which is on the other side of Cadbury's road factory, yes.
Yeah, that's what but there's more parking around further at the football grounds and things like that. There's lots of parking there.
There is public parking
Yes.
around the Cadbury Peninsula, but that's not parking dedicated to this use.
Sorry?
It's not parking dedicated to this use, and it's not car parking that the applicant has relied on to put this application in.
but it's Cadbury's Park, so the rest is going to be on Cadbury's parking land, is it?
If you look at
This proposition is
this
going to be
proposition,
the land.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there a bus that goes around is there a bus stop near
There is a bus stop nearby, yes. So
So
there
people
is.
can actually just go and do the thing without going on the boat, or is it just?
Yes, they can, and that has been accommodated in the assessment from the applicant. So they've nominated that I think 5% of visitors will come through alternate means of transport. So their anticipation from their indicative studies is that.
So you reckon 95% are going to come on the boat?
No, 70% on the boat, roughly 25 by vehicle, and 5% by other means, which might be walking, buses, cycling, being local.
And I still worry about the same as Eddie about that thing going up there. If I was in a wheelchair, I would not like to be going on one of those things that Big W, if that's what you call an inclinator.
No.
It's going to have to go an awful long way to get down that steepness, whatever you call it, to get down from the top to the bottom. That's an awful lot of inclinators.
So the inclinator is an enclosed unit. So from the ferry, you catch the inclinator, which is, and I'm going to use the wrong word here, so please forgive me. It's similar to a gondola or something. So you
but it's
get into
attached.
an enclosed unit and you go up the inclinator. And then when you reach the top of the inclinator, you reach a level area which takes you to the waiting area at the base of the stairs. And from that point, you either wait.
At the base of the stairs?
Yes. So at the base of the stairs, you either wait for the buggy or you take the stairs, depending on your mobility.
Okay. I only got this afternoon, so it's been a bit rushed. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, that might be it. I had other things. How can you say how many people are going to be at work at Cadbury's and how many people are going to need that car park spot?
So what's happened?
Different shifts are different numbers.
Absolutely. So what's happened is that the applicant has obviously negotiated a commercial agreement with Cadbury's in which there is a certain amount of parking which will be dedicated to the visitor experience, and the balance of the car parking will remain for the Cadbury factory workers. And that's obviously been done through a detailed assessment of the existing parking supply and demand and the projected needs of the future development. So through the assessment that's been provided to us with the application, they've got an anticipated amount of car parking to accommodate all of the shift workers within the existing Cadbury's car park, but to also provide parking to ensure that this proposed new use doesn't cause an impost in the streets and surrounds for the neighbourhood.
So there will be marked visitor parking or work parking?
There will be a separation between the factory car parking and the visitor experience parking, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, are there any more questions from our elected members? No? Then I'm going to put the substantive vote. Just check that I'm doing that in the right order now.
Well, there you go.
Do you want to sum up?
No, thank you. I think we've covered everything.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, so I need a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Deputy. And seconder, thank you, Alderman Cockshott. And I'm going to put the substantive motion. Oh, yes, you can speak to it. I beg your pardon.
It's been a long time.
Well, it's a very serious
it's
development,
very-
so yes,
Absolutely.
we're trying to follow.
Yeah, so certainly after hearing all the explanations and the answers from the developer and the officers, and I just want to really do so, I know you hear this a lot from us all, we do say thank you to you a lot, but we really do mean it. This is a significant project for our city, so it deserves the intent and the questioning around it, and certainly to the applicants as well. Thank you very much for being flexible in the consideration and working with council, especially tonight around condition 17. You almost saw, it live how things can happen, and I think that's a great way, and it's a great way that our council is willing to be flexible and to want to work with developers. I think it's a great thing. So certainly, Glenorchy spent many years wanting to change our narrative and really define who we are and what we offer, and I really believe this project's outstanding. It will provide another tourist operation in our city that will be something that people from around the world and around Australia will come to. So it is a genuinely significant tourist operation. The planning assessment is very thorough. The questions that I've asked have been really taken seriously, and I thank you everyone for their answers. Yes, with some assumption and trust, and the representations were certainly received. All 17 of them of the 18 were supportive. The heritage impact has been carefully managed, and the other concerns around the operational side of things, yes, there's still questions around the ferry assumptions, but the applicant is certainly committed to making that work and managing that through the ticketing to the conditions that are proposed as well. So it's certainly, the operator has every commercial incentive to make that work. And so I'm excited to see it progress to the next stage.
Thank you. I'll now put that to the vote.
No,
Would you like to talk to?
We'll get the chance to
Yes,
speak.
okay, Alderman King.
Thank you. And again, very well spoken, Deputy Mayor. And again, thank you to our staff for how many pages was it? 300 and something pages of reading. It was 29. Yeah, it was great. But thank you. You do a wonderful job. You answer all those questions really well, and the applicants as well, and the community that have come in and expressed their opinion. What this shows to me is that Glenorchy City Council is getting more and more towards being open for business is what one of our goals is, to be considered to be open for business, but without compromise. Without compromise. In other words, we've followed advice, we've had good advice, we've had good direction, we've had good discussion, but we want this city to grow. We want it to be the place where people want to work, live and play, and this is our motto and our desire to make this the best place we can. So thank you to all involved, and look forward to voting on this.
Thank you, Alderman Cockshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo my fellow elected members and planning committee members in what they've just said. I think this will be a very transformative project for the city. I just want to say thank you to the planners and the applicants. I think it shows we're a very collaborative council working together to achieve things, and we are open for business. And I will say, on my time on the planning authority, I don't think I've seen a project with as many conditions and checks and balances put in place, and there's 39 in total from memory. So from a public point of view, rest assured that we have done our due diligence as a planning team with this project. And what I believe is I'm looking forward to seeing it progress and go to the next stages. Obviously goes to the Planning Commission from there, but obviously this will be very transformative and will make a big impact, particularly for the Claremont region. So I'm thrilled to see us hopefully progressing forward with this project.
Thank you. Alderman Marks, do you want to say anything? You're right. Well, I would also like to thank our staff for the diligence that they've put into this application. I thank the professionalism of the applicants, and I also thank the developer for outstanding recognition of the beauty of Glenorchy and highlighting it with this state-of-the-art tourist attraction, which has been specifically designed to showcase Glenorchy's views of our beautiful mountain and river. And I think it's just going to put Glenorchy on the map, and it's going to be done with a very high quality, superior tourist attraction. And I think I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved in this project. So, put the motion to the vote. Are you ready? Set, go. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Congratulations. Now, I'm going to pass over to the Senior Statutory Planner to explain what happens next.
Okay, so now that we've approved the application, a permit will be prepared and sent out to the applicant and all representatives in the next couple of days. That will commence a 14-day appeal period in which the applicant or any interested party can appeal council's decision. And following that, the permit is considered finalised and ready to go, and the applicant can commence work on the next stage of the development.
Excellent. Thank you for everyone for coming. Thank you for those who've been watching online, and I hope you agree with our decision. I'm sure it's going to be great for Glenorchy. Thank you.
We're done.